Welcome to the Effort Bucket, a podcast exploring the realms of cybersecurity and our daily human interactions with digital innovations. I'm Alex Gallegos, and I'm a systems administrator.
Ashley Keski, a security analyst.
And I'm Paul Ruffalo, an independent cybersecurity consultant.
Nice. And so welcome to episode 0, I guess, kind of our pilot episode to introduce the idea of the podcast and why you should come back in a couple of weeks and listen to more, I suppose.
Yes, I think one of our biggest goals is to educate folks in kind of an easy to understand way about cybersecurity. Yeah.
And, you know, I think we kind of had this idea, it's been knocking around for, about 6 months now that we wanted to do this? Does that sound right to everybody?
At least a year.
Yeah, I'm thinking a year.
Yeah.
We talked about it, and then we tried it, and then we stopped, and here we are again.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to tell everybody about our failures, but okay, sure. Okay, radical transparency. That's now baked into the show from minute 2. Good deal. Yeah, we wanted to make a podcast. Well, we started from this idea of we're all obviously in a technical role, and quick show of hands, which would be really effective over audio. How many people here have ever just been fed up with technology to the point that they're like, just F it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all have our hands up, just so those that can't see.
Right, which is everybody. For the record, there is no video version of this podcast. So we had the idea that there must be other people that feel the same way. And it's like, well, why is that? I think a big part of that is because there's not really anybody that's talking to a technical audience about issues that really affect them in their day-to-day lives in a format that is digestible for a wide audience. It's either podcasts by technology folks for technology folks, which basically means boring, right? Or alternatively, it's information about like consumer electronics and how to get the best out of your Android device. And, you know, there's absolutely merit to that information, but we saw a gap out in the podcast space, and we thought, we'll do our best to try and fill it.
Yeah, and I would add that a couple things. One, piggybacking on that, with the collateral and material and content that's out there, I guess more so content than anything, a lot of it is very specific. And because it is specific, you go rather deep. And I think that's all fine, well, and good. And there's content that needs to be out there like that, because people do use a number of different channels to learn from today. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, YouTube was a blip in the radar, and people might just go to it for entertainment. And now you see it as a genuine vehicle for on-hands learning and all those kinds of things. And that's not what we're here to do, really. We're not going to go deep into any topic unless maybe we find something that the audience really likes, or maybe we start digging into it and appreciate it and want to talk about it more. And I was actually just talking with my family today as we were waiting for new phones to be set up. And I was talking about this podcast, and they had kind of said, well, it's about security. Well, why would you do that? That sounds boring and nerdy and too technical. And I said, well, that's not the point. The point is to deliver this in a way that anyone can learn something or maybe find interest in a topic that we have and walk away with maybe some best practices or something that they otherwise wouldn't use or be aware of.
Yeah, what was the exact quote? It's not going to be fun, wasn't that?
Yes, it was. It's not going to be fun. I was like, well, thanks for the support.
Yeah, and so that is now the challenge, and we want to make sure that it's exactly the opposite of that.
So fun from what I would say high school all the way to death.
Yeah.
That's our audience.
So, like, for example, maybe don't talk about death so much. Like, that will help.
I would agree.
Yeah. See, we're figuring it out right along with you. So I just want to go around really quickly and have each member introduce themselves a little bit. Ashley, I'm going to pick on you first. I know you said you're a cybersecurity analyst, but kind of walk us through what your career path up until this point looks like.
Absolutely. Started out actually in network engineering. Did that for about 12 years and transitioned into cybersecurity earlier, I guess last year now. Started out as a SOC analyst for a cybersecurity company and learning a lot every day about what goes on. All the things that hit, the edges and endpoints, and it's fascinating. It keeps me on my toes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. And Paul, how about you?
Yeah, so I've had a number of different roles throughout my career, ranging from software development to quality engineering to general technology leadership, and then ended up in security on kind of by accident. We had been dealing with PCI compliance as something that we were responsible for going all the way back to 2007. And I was one of the contributing members of the team that kind of brought that to fruition where I was. And although that group, we really kind of fought it hand, tooth, and nail, just saying, this is a joke, it's unnecessary, it's overhead, it's garbage, it sucks, a few four-letter words here and there. Fast forward to 2024 now, and wholeheartedly think that is something that every company that handles cards needs to be adhering to in some way, shape, or form. In many cases, they don't. They just ignore it. And I just think from an end user's perspective, that's the bare minimum bar. I mean, there's a cliche that's out there that says compliance is not security, which, again, I wholeheartedly agree with. But it is a good starting point if you have nothing. So I really ended up owning that for the better part of half a decade, and then used that as a launch pad into my CISO role, which, looking back on it, I think that title was very overblown. Really played more of a security officer role, but not a chief. We didn't have the best practices in place across the board. Our staff wasn't big, and we were using a lot of third parties and whatnot. And as I look at some of the roles that are out there for true chiefs, I mean, they've got 15, 20, 30 years of experience and a lot more users, a lot more endpoints, a lot more scope. So even then, really fond of working with technical folks, people that are on the front line. I think one of the reasons that I did want to do this is, we came together as a group at the tail end of 22 and 23, and we all talked about wanting to continue to work together and grow. So that's why we're here.
I would also kind of say, just, to put a bit of a feather in your cap, hopefully, whenever I hear about chief level employee, one of the things I think of is they don't get told no anywhere near as often as I feel like people told you no. Or just, I know you said that we've got to do this or we can't conduct business anymore, but you don't seem to understand, Paul. We really don't want to, like a lot. And so it's just not going to happen. And that always was kind of sad. Paul says that he fell into cybersecurity by accident. I feel like I fell into everything by accident, by just never really having a good idea what I wanted to do. And I'm 37 years old now, and I just still don't. And that's probably the way it'll stay for the foreseeable future. But I have done a lot of roles in technology from everything from help desk to systems administration, server engineering, asset management, backup support, all the way into kind of jumping into cybersecurity as my primary role, and then moving back into systems administration as my primary bread and butter for day in and day out. And I've been doing that sort of thing for the last 14 years, and probably will continue to do so. As it seems like every time something new comes out, I get into it for a while and then figure out there's something else to be interested in and excited about. But at some point, I think that's just having a career in IT, right? That's not anything that is abnormal, right? So, somebody agree with me quickly. Help.
No, I would say, one of the things in my previous career that I was told was, well, you only worked at one place for 20 years. And I think more often than not, as I'm transitioning, I've heard that as more of a negative than a positive. And to be honest, depending upon context, I could go either way. However, if I'm going to be more positive and thinking about more specifically about what I have done and did, is yes, I was at one place for 20 years, but I probably had half a dozen to a dozen different jobs. There are others that work someplace for 20, 30, even 40 years that have done the same thing day in and day out and haven't extended and grown. Again, under different contexts, that could be positive or negative. It just kind of depends on what you're trying to sell at the time.
Sure.
In my opinion, though, regardless of positive or negative context, if you're at some place for multiple decades, that shows loyalty, and I feel like that should be highlighted.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, no, I ran into a similar situation when I was interviewing early last year. People were looking at my resume and seeing that I worked at one company for 6 years and then was acquired and worked there for 2 years, and so I was technically on my resume it looked like I was somewhere for 8 years, and they kind of cringed a little bit, but I like seeing projects all the way through.
Right.
Yeah, and I always kind of felt the same way. Like there's been this loss of a sense of loyalty to companies, especially as let's put it down to what it is, as companies have lost the sense of loyalty to their employees as time goes by, and it's become a lot more advantageous for the average employee, especially in the technology sector, to hop around from one job to the next in order to manage or maximize their earning potential. But that being said, if you find a company that treats you well and makes it worthwhile to be there, then I don't think you should be looking for the exit just because it's like, well, I've just been here too long. I have to leave just because it's time to leave. I believe in doing things for good reasons, and just because it's been an amount of time is not a good reason. It's not data driven.
Yeah, when you're reviewing resumes, you see either someone who's been there for a year and they're job hopping, or 4 years, which is what they really say, like 4 to 5 years at a company, and then you need to move on. Yeah, you just see those trends.
Mind if I transition?
Yeah, go for it.
So obviously we're very good at getting off on tangents, so listeners should understand that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
We might get to a topic and then find 4 others inside that topic, and then we'll ramble on, and then one of us is anointed let's bring us back to the task at hand.
I mean, I would describe that as the value proposition.
Exactly. I am not saying it's negative. I'm just making that known that this is sort of on purpose. So the other thing I would say just about wanting to put another voice out there in the content world is, I think people don't realize how wide information security is, and for that matter, how deep any given topic can be.
Yeah.
So I certainly wanted to be part of the community to say, you don't have to first of all, what Hollywood shows you isn't near what happens on a day-to-day basis.
I'm in.
Obviously, Hollywood wants to make it interesting, make it very hacker-esque. But I think those of us that are professionals in the space understand that there's probably a fair amount of our time where it could be considered boring if you didn't like what you were doing. And there's lots of people management, there's lots of documentation, lots of training, lots of learning. And it certainly is evolving pretty much every single day, at least from what I've seen.
So look for us to share some of those news stories and some of our own observations from our unique perspective in the space, as well as some of our thoughts on what's going on in the industry as a whole.
One of the things I've dug into recently is the entrepreneurial operating system. And it's not really brand new. It's not really trailblazing. But what is interesting about it is it kind of codifies how you go about being an entrepreneur and being successful in a startup world. But what the coaching says is any successful small business, and so a small business would be anywhere from 2 to 50 employees, give or take, and very small revenue numbers. You're talking, probably south of $100 million. They have 2 people, the visionary and the integrator. And the visionary is, the big brain, like, hey, I have all these ideas. I can build relationships and, be very good at that, but I can't make it work. Like, I have this idea, I know it's going to work, but I don't know how to do it. And integrators are the ones that come in and do it. Like, they say, well, you want to go build this plane? Well, these are the parts you need, all this stuff, let's build a plan. And they're very logical, they're very people, like good at managing people, not necessarily good at building broad relationships and partnerships.
Sure.
And so I've done a lot of soul searching, and I know I'm an integrator. But what's really interesting is one of the books I read on it, there's 2 comments about not needing industry experience to be successful.
Yeah. The baseline of what you've learned at the company is invaluable. Like you it's the core, right? Like you can take that anywhere.
Well, and especially because, when we're talking about being in a technical role, like installing certificates is the same everywhere. Making sure 2-factor authentication is put in place is the same everywhere. There may be different requirements depending on what the industry is, but it's always the technical steps for achieving what you want to achieve are not going to vastly differ from one place to the next.
Right. So this is from Rocket Fuel in a section near the latter part of the book. An important factor that surprises many visionaries is that a good integrator does not need to know your industry. Michael's integrator, John, knew nothing about the legal industry. Most of the time, a great integrator can learn the industry. Remember that James Cousins of Ford Motor Company knew nothing about how an automobile worked. Being a great integrator depends more on the ability to manage human energy than being an industry expert.
I like that.
I really like that.
You may not be quite enough of a visionary to have already set out on your own, yet enough of one to see how a successful company could work. You have that entrepreneurial curiosity that causes your colleagues to see you differently within a large organization. They aren't sure exactly what to do with you. Truth is, you probably scare them a bit because they don't understand how your mind works. You seek more freedom. They are wired to be cogs in a machine. You are wired to take a vision and go make it happen. That is a very special gift.
And in addition to all of that, we have quite a few contacts in the local cybersecurity space, and I think it'd be really interesting to hear from some of them from time to time on some of the projects and topics that they're passionate about and really interested in. So I'm hoping that there'll be a space for other voices at some point in the future. And last but not least, just for people to share some of their experiences that they've had. So that's pretty much it. That's the idea for the podcast. All right, how are we all feeling? We feeling excited?
Yes.
Great.
Fart
Absolutely.
and rainbows.
All right. Excellent. Yeah. I got to tell you, I'm really looking forward to this opportunity to kind of do stuff together again. Because, as we previously mentioned, we all met together working under the same roof at the same company. Well, technically, actually, the first time we properly met face to face instead of it just being over a Teams call. Do you all remember this? Standing in the baggage claim at McCarran International Airport.
Oh, yes. I didn't realize that my luggage had come down, and so we were just waiting. I think it went around like 12 times.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Wasn't it like we were standing at one of the baggage claims and it was over at the other one?
I think so, yep.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And don't forget, Alex, I interviewed you in the airport on the way there.
Yeah, at MSP, right?
Yep.
Minneapolis, St. Paul. Yeah.
Over a coffee. And then I think it was the morning of day 2, Ashley, I interviewed you in the bar that was not yet open, wherever we stayed. So
Yeah, where did we stay?
The Luxor.
yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
That's right.
This was
Yeah.
pre-hack, ladies and gentlemen. So we
Yes.
our data was as safe as we thought it could be at the time. But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this was Black Hat 21. So,
No, Black
22.
Hat 22.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, they probably didn't do a Black Hat 21 in person, did they? No, of course not. No, I tried to do math because it was like, oh, it's a new year. Remember, you got to subtract an extra year, and then I subtracted too many. So I swore I wouldn't do that once we switched over to 24, and I did it anyway. It's only January 24. It's not by the time you listen to it, but it is by the time we're recording it. Radical transparency.
right.
Yeah. I finished up that first interview, and I realized two things. One, I realized how little I knew about cybersecurity, and then immediately after that, I thought, oh, I'm not gonna get this job. That's a real shame. 'Cause
At least I get to go to Black Hat.
right, exactly, yeah. But I just felt like I absolutely bombed that interview. It's like, tell me what the 7 layers of the OSI model are. It's like, oh shoot, I can never remember. Yeah, always fun stuff.
Never eat sausage pizza.
See, I always feel like I can explain to people. It's like, all right, well, I can't remember what it is without looking it up. That's why there's documentation to refer back to. But I can at least explain to you what the idea behind the model is, which is to describe all the layers of communication between a couple of machines in a network and how they communicate with each other. And that, first you have to have physical connectivity, and then there has to be traffic allowed between the two devices, and then the software has to be able to communicate from the one side to the other. And it's a way to describe all of those different layers that have to be in place in order for communication to take place. And I don't know, I guess apparently that was a good enough answer, but
And it's never throw sausage pizza away. I don't know what I was saying earlier. But you had a great one, Paul. I don't remember which one you had remembered.
I don't either, which is
What your
terrible.
mnemonic was.
Yeah. I'd have to go find it. I don't remember. That's terrible.
well, okay, that means it's probably a really bad mnemonic. But just the fact that you have a lot more networking experience than I do, and you don't remember it either, actually makes me feel like 1,000% better. Like,
I remember it being really funny, but yeah, in college I was taught the never throw sausage pizza away.
right. Well, I mean, that's also a good stance that I can immediately get behind.
Right.
Works for me. All right. Well, I think that's pretty much everything that we want to hit. Otherwise, we can ramble around for an hour. But really, the idea is that this is the podcast. We'll go over some topics that are interesting to us and will hopefully be interesting to you. And hopefully, you'll join us in the future. No, you have to say goodbye out loud. They can't see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, we'll work on that.
We're going to work on the outro.
Yeah. The F It Bucket is hosted by Ashley Keski, Paul Ruffalo, and me, Alex Gallegos. Our theme song is Limit 70 by Kevin MacLeod. And if you want to engage with us, you can find us on social media. We're on Twitter. We're on X at the F It Bucket. That's EFFIT. Our subreddit is r/the F It Bucket, and you can email us directly at thefitbucket@gmail.com. Our first full episode releases on February 29th, and we hope you'll be there with us. But until then, these three enthusiastic amateurs with a microphone and a dream are signing off.
All presidents since Truman never did pot.
That was it. I remember thinking it was hilarious.
I literally had a brain fart because I was thinking OSI. No, that's not the model. That's the name. Shit.
I'm sitting here Googling it.
Yeah.